Hey guys, Spud here, and today we have a recording of a one-on-one training session with one of my patrons. I know it's been a while since I've posted a one-on-one training lesson, and that is mostly because a lot of our training flights lately have had to be broken down into smaller, more esoteric chunks due to DCS, hardware, server, and knowledge issues. But we finally have one here that will make a nice coherent video for you guys to enjoy and learn from here on YouTube. This patron, boldly named Ashhole for the LOLz, did a great job after only flying in DCS World for around 6 months or so. I think you guys will all agree that he is super close to being ready to fly in one of our Sunday missions or any more complex event or campaign. And we went through the usual mix of skills for a first lesson. And I am really glad that we could clear up some misconceptions about the autopilot and how and when it'll break out and kick itself off. I think you guys will also find that he did a really amazing job on unguided weapon delivery and had some of the best roll-in maneuvers I've ever seen from a brand new DCS World student. So if you're interested in a one-on-one training session with me, I do these lessons for all patrons who donate $15 or more to the channel on Patreon. Once you're signed up, send me a PM on Discord and we will work you into the schedule. Our sessions together are all about giving you the tools, study materials, and knowledge to be able to practice everything we work on in our sessions on your own or with your friends while I'm not there. So that way, once you have those skills mastered and you're ready to move on to the next set of skills, we can hop back in, work on those together, clean up some rough edges from the previous set, and so on and so forth until we've brought you from zero to hero in your favorite DCS aircraft. So with that, thanks for watching guys, please fly safe out there, and we'll see you in the next one. Beautiful. At this point, we have ourselves a healthy Hornet, and we are ready to taxi. So what we're going to do is we are going to taxi out to a runway 31. Do you want me to kind of give you a little intro here to how to talk on the radio?
Sure.
Okay. So, 99% of radio communications in aviation can be broken down to a very simple formula. And if you can remember this formula and kind of apply this to what you say on the radio, it can make things a lot easier for you starting off. So the formula is going to be, you want to say who you're talking to, who you are, where you are, and what you want. So in our case here, who we're talking to when we are asking for permission to taxi is going to be Muafak Salty Ground Controller. So we'll say Muafak Salty Ground, who they are, who we are, Spud 1 flight of 2 FA-18s, that's who we are, and where we are is in the northern soft shelters.
Okay.
And then the ground controller is going to acknowledge you and give you your taxi instructions. So they will say something to the effect of, Roger, Spud 1-1, Muafak Salty Ground, taxi to runway 31 via taxiway Foxtrot Alpha. And then once we receive those instructions, anytime you receive instructions from a controller, you want to read those instructions back to that controller so that way everybody's on the same page. Because if you read it back to them incorrectly, they can have a chance to correct you. So that way you don't accidentally, say, run into another jet or get stuck on a taxiway that's a dead end or taxi onto the wrong runway or whatever it might be. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Perfect. So if you want to try, I'll play Muafak Salty Ground for you.
All right. How do you say it?
However you can say it. Just how about just go with Salty Ground?
Salty Ground. Ashhole 1, flight of 2.
Yep.
Crap.
We're just at
All
the
right.
northern soft shelters.
At the northern stop shelters, requesting taxi to runway 23?
We're going for 3-1, but that's
3-1.
okay.
Okay, honestly, I didn't remember.
That's okay. No worries. Then the controller would come back to you and say, Roger, Ashhole 1, you're cleared to taxi to runway 31 via Foxtrot Alpha. And then you just read back those instructions.
That'd be Ashhole 1, taxi Foxtrot Alpha.
To 3-1.
To 3-1.
Yep, there you go.
Okay.
And if they don't reply to you, that means you got it right and you're cleared to follow that clearance.
Okay.
So I'm going to follow you here. We're going to pull the parking brake off, turn our taxi light on, and basically coming out of your soft shelter there, you're going to make a left-hand turn, and then I'll give you instructions from there.
All right, which way are we turning? Sorry.
Left-hand turn coming out of your shelter here. And for this turn, you may need a little bit of high gain nose wheel steering. Cool. Try to taxi a little bit slower for me. Just take those turns a little bit on the slower side. There you go.
Gotcha.
So basically on a straightaway, on your ground speed, we want to see somewhere around 10 to 15 knots. For a turn, about 8 knots, if that makes sense.
So HSI is up on the left.
Yeah.
Where does it say the...
So do you see the little airplane symbol in the middle of your HSI? Where it says 0G right now, that's 0 knots of ground speed.
Okay.
Yep.
You said 10?
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
And a super small thing, just a piece of etiquette, not that that matters here in DCS, is if you have a jet taxi in front of you, turn that taxi light back off so you don't blind that pilot.
Okay. So
And-
turn it off while...
If you're pointing at another aircraft.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. The reason why we didn't turn the taxi light on right away is the taxi light is going to be a symbol to other pilots, as well as ground crew, more importantly, that you're about to move your aircraft.
Okay.
Coming out onto the main taxiway out in front of us here that we're about to tee into, we're going to make a left-hand turn.
Yeah, just like a mock radio call.
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Salty Tower, Ashhole 1, flight of 2, holding short of runway 32.
3-1.
3-1, requesting takeoff.
Exactly. So the tower controller can come back to you with one of 3 different clearances that he or she can give you. That is either Roger, Ashhole 1, hold short, runway 31, which means the runway is occupied. There's somebody landing, there's somebody taking off, so just stay where you're at, and I'll give you your clearance in just a little bit. Or he can say, Roger, Ashhole 1, cleared for takeoff, runway 31. At which point, you can enter the runway, and the runway is yours, take off at your leisure. Or he can give you the third clearance option, which is kind of the more complicated one. He could say, Roger, Ashhole 1, you are cleared to line up and wait, runway 31, which means you're going to line up on the runway and get ready for takeoff, but you're not cleared for takeoff till you hear the words, cleared for takeoff, runway 31. The
Gotcha.
reason why they might use that third clearance is to increase the efficiency of the runway. So there could be a jet landing who's still rolling out on the runway, or a flight of jets in front of you still taking off. And he's getting you ready to go so that way he can get more jets on that runway quicker. That makes sense?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. So for today, we're going to fly to waypoint 1, and we're going to climb to 15,000 feet and hold 350 knots of indicated airspeed to start off with. So make sure you have waypoint boxed on your HSI and waypoint 1 selected.
Gotcha.
Beautiful.
Done.
And when I take off, I typically like to replace the HSI page with the HUD repeater on my left DDI in case we're taking off into the sun and my HUD gets blanked out. Now, obviously, the sun's going to be to our back, but always a good practice there.
Okay.
So we're going to do a formation takeoff today, and so I'll introduce that to you. So why don't we go ahead and line up and wait on the runway here, and line up on the middle of the left half of the runway, and I'm going to line up on the middle of the right half.
Okay. I'm assuming we don't need to request takeoff.
No, we're good.
Okay.
All right. So when you're the wingman and you're setting up for a formation takeoff like today, the best place to be is to line up your leader's wingtip with their cockpit, kind of like lining up a rear and front sight of like a rifle.
Okay.
And double check for me, are your flaps at full or half? They look like they're fully down.
At full.
Yep, we want to be half for takeoff.
Gotcha.
I'm glad I took a look.
Well, I know one thing is on a carrier, you want them at full.
For takeoff on a carrier, they're going to be half as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I've tried half and I go straight in the water.
You may not have the correct nose-up stab trim set.
That may be it.
Yep. So with that, we'll talk about the kind of cadence for a formation takeoff. So as the leader, like you are today, once you are set on the runway, you're going to make the radio call to your wingmen, 1's set. Then you're going to hear 2's set when your -2 is set. And then 3 set, 4 set, once your whole flight is set and ready to go.
Okay.
Once everyone's set and ready, you're then going to call for everyone to hold their brakes. You're then going to make a radio call to the effect of full mill, or run them up, or something of that nature to let everybody know that they need to push their throttle up to full military power. Then, once everybody's done that and you've given them a little bit of time, you're going to call brakes, 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 and everyone's going to release their brakes together. And then a few moments after that, as everybody's starting to roll down the runway together, you're going to call for afterburners or gate, and everyone's going to push their throttle all the way up to afterburner and take off together. That makes sense?
Yes.
Beautiful. So whenever you're ready, I'm ready to go, and go ahead and march us off.
All right, 1 set.
2 set.
All right, brakes.
2.
All right, what'd you say? Full mill?
Full mill.
All right. I'm rolling, I guess, apparently.
Yep.
Brake nut.
Yep.
Okay.
That's because you went to afterburner. That's okay.
Oh,
and
did
then,
I? Oh.
And then call for burner.
So sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry.
And make sure you call for burner.
Burner.
And go full power. There you go.
Oh.
So make sure you turn that nose wheel steering off at 70 knots. Not bad. And then we want to climb up about 7 degrees, nose up on the pitch ladder.
Ready.
Nice job, friend. Now keep an eye on that airspeed. We're already past our contract speed.
What was the speed at?
350.
350. Okay. That's one thing I seem to struggle with in this plane is keeping at a consistent speed. I can't find my throttle.
With a jet engine, especially in a fighter jet, your throttle's never going to stop moving. You're always going to be moving that throttle.
Gotcha.
As altitude changes and airspeed changes and the weight of your aircraft changes through expending ordnance or using fuel, that throttle's always going to be moving.
Okay. I'm running about 315.
Yep, roger that. And then one thing to always keep in mind when you are leading a formation is always be nice and gentle, nice and easy with your movements. That's going to be, with your stick as well as with your throttle. So that way you don't, let your wingman squirt out in front of you, or you don't leave them in the dust behind you, okay?
Gotcha.
It's kind of called giving your wingman something. So if you're going to accelerate, don't use full afterburner. Use, maybe half afterburner. So that way your wingman can use full afterburner to stay with you.
Gotcha.
Or if you're slowing down, don't go full idle. Go a little bit above idle. So that way your wingman can use full idle.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So we just passed waypoint 1. Or, yeah, about to pass waypoint 1. So let's go ahead and continue on to waypoint 2.
What altitude did you want us at?
We're going to go for 15,000, 15,000.
Okay.
So once we start kind of getting out of the terminal airspace here and we start to cruise out on towards our target area, I like to open up my radar attack page on my right DDI and my EW page on my left DDI. And we're going to make sure that we get our radar turned on to the operate position. And also make sure you get your radar up as well. Nice. So we're a little bit past 15,000 feet, but let's go ahead and level off at 18,000.
I was focused.
Yep. So something to keep in mind is we don't want to focus on one thing too hard to the detriment of others, right?
Right.
And that's a big thing in aviation, right? Because there's so many things happening all the time that we need to always keep our brain kind of like thinking about everything at the same time. So in order to do that, we want to kind of develop what's called an instrument scan, where we're basically going to be moving our eyes in basically a circle around the HUD, moving from our airspeed to our navigational information to our altitude and back around. And also include in that scan your radar page, your EW page, things you're seeing in the HMD, things of that nature. So that way you're always moving your eyes around and never getting fixated on any one thing to the detriment of others.
Gotcha. Alright, I'm speeding up a little bit.
Yep. Have you used the auto throttle at all in the F6 or FA18, not F16?
I've used it a little bit.
Okay.
Not a lot, to be honest with you.
Okay. So the auto throttle will hold your current Mach, not your indicated airspeed. So that's something to keep in mind. So if you turn the auto throttle on at a low altitude, you may see your indicated airspeed degrade as you climb. Similarly, your indicated airspeed will climb as you descend if you have your auto throttle on from a high altitude. Does that make any sense at all?
Yeah, it does.
Cool. So indicated airspeed, which is derived from basically air molecules going into a tube and pushing on a little flexible diaphragm in your air data computer, that is displayed as indicated airspeed. So as you climb, there's less air molecules to push on that diaphragm, so it's going to go down. And it will actually degrade at a rate of 2% per every 1,000 feet of altitude climbed. So that's why when you're way up high in the Hornet and you're going like Mach 1, on your Mach indicator, it may only say like 300 knots on your indicated airspeed.
Okay.
Kind of a weird concept.
No, it makes sense. It's a little above my. All right, I'm gonna.
Yep.
Put on my. Oh my god.
What's up?
Autopilot. There we go. Boom.
Perfect.
Couple. So
Nice.
I can't control. Hopefully it doesn't do anything crazy.
Yeah, it shouldn't. We've got about 49 nautical miles to waypoint 2, so nothing to worry about there.
Alright.
Alright. So now we're just cruising. And let's go ahead and pop the burners on, and let's speed up to 350 indicated, and then we'll pop the auto throttle on.
Up.
Little fast.
Yeah.
So keep in mind when you're in an airplane, things don't happen instantaneously, right?
No.
Things take a bit of, a heartbeat or two to actually kind of happen. So it's like everything you do in an airplane is kind of like trying to shoot a moving target with a rifle. We have to really like lead and stay in front of the target, whether that target be our airspeed, altitude, or whatever it might be. So always try to think of, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps ahead, right? So if we're gonna speed up to 350 knots, we may want to start pulling the throttle out of afterburner at maybe 340 knots.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, if we're climbing and we want to, say, level off at a certain altitude, we may want to start leveling off maybe 500 feet before we get to that altitude. Because it's not an instantaneous thing. We can't just be like, and like nail 16,000 feet right away once we get there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Perfect.
Alright, let's see.
Alright, want to see something kind of fun and cool?
Yeah.
Alright, so keep an eye on me, and I'm going to do a roll over the top of you here. And back in formation over here.
Nice.
Yeah. Kind of fun. Cool. So as we fly on out to our target area here, at a certain point, as you start to get closer and closer to Indian country, you're going to want to set your aircraft up for actually engaging in combat, whether that be air-to-air, air-to-ground combat, whatever it might be. And so we have an acronym for that, which is FENCE. You've probably heard the term fence in or fence out in some of my missions.
Maybe. I've heard fence in, I believe.
Okay, perfect. So as you get closer to bad guy territory, the leader of the flight, which is going to be you for today, is going to say to his flight, hey, Spud 1 flight, fence in. At which point, your wingmen and yourself are going to go through the FENCE acronym. Now, FENCE, to start off with, F is for fuel. You're going to check and make sure you have enough fuel to engage in combat. So make sure you don't have a fuel leak, or make sure you haven't expended more gas than you thought you would, or need to hit a tanker before you get to the target. Things of that nature.
Okay.
Then you're going to go for E, external lights. You're going to make sure external lights are off. Looks like yours are already off, so we're good there. So I'm going to turn mine off. N for navigation. We're going to ensure that we're navigating to the right place to go into combat in the right area. Then C, for countermeasures, we're going to make sure that our ECM switch is in the receive position and our dispenser switch is in bypass or the on position.
Okay.
And then we're back to E again, and that's going to be emitters. So we're going to make sure that our radar is turned on and is emitting in the mode we need it to be emitting in. And then the second E in fence is going to be employment. So it's going to be master arm on. And then for today, since we're dropping some unguided bombs, we're going to go to air to ground master mode just above the master arm switch. And we're going to set up our weapons. So we're going to select our Mark 83s on the stores page there.
Okay.
We're going to make sure that the mode is set to CCIP and the mechanical fuse is set to nose and tail.
Oh, okay. Got it.
And once we got that, we should be ready to rock and roll, and we are all fenced in and set. So one thing on your autopilot here, because we're in a very slow climb, I think you have the attitude hold mode of your autopilot on and not the barometric altitude hold mode.
So that's one thing I've always struggled with autopilot is I can never seem to get it to work the way I want it to with barometric hold. Okay,
so make sure
every time I do it, it just doesn't seem to work for some reason.
Okay, that's kind of odd.
It's probably user error, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no problem. So what we need to do is go ahead and hit that A/P push tile, that autopilot push tile.
Yep.
And then hit the button next to B alt for me. I'm going to take a look at your screen. So go ahead and kick the autopilot all the way off. So go ahead and turn couple mode off. Cool. Now go B alt first. Nice. Now don't touch the stick. So if you move the stick too much while in barometric altitude hold or any autopilot mode, you're going to break the autopilot out, which means that you're going to overwrite it and it's not going to hold your altitude anymore. And, the autopilot will automatically turn off. And it does that for, we'll go ahead and pause it here. Yeah, it does that for a couple reasons. It'll do that because, number one, the autopilot system may be thinking, uh-oh, the pilot's fighting me. Something must be going wrong here, and it's probably me, the autopilot, that's messing up. So I'm going to kick off. Okay. The second reason it will do that is because if you have the autopilot on and say a SAM gets shot at you or a MiG gets onto your 6 o'clock or something, you just, instead of having to go through and press all these buttons, you just yank the stick and boom, the autopilot's off for you. Okay. So you can, when in barometric altitude hold mode, you can very gently move the stick left or right in what's called control wheel steering mode, in which your stick acts more like a steering wheel, and you can actually turn the jet very gently left and right to change your heading. Okay. But if you're too violent with that, you're going to kick the autopilot off. Does that make sense? Yeah. Attitude hold mode, which is ATTH, is basically like just dampens out your controls, and the jet will maintain the pitch and roll you have if you let go of the stick. So that's going to be really nice for, say, maybe you need to do, say, a prolonged spiral climb or a prolonged spiral descent. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Cool. So just be real gentle with the stick whenever the autopilot's on. Now,
yeah, I think what I've been doing is coupling it with the waypoint and then trying to, while it's on, try to go barometric. And
so that's not going to work as well. Your workflow should be barometric altitude hold first, and then coupled mode. Does that make sense? Yeah. Perfect. Because then the jet knows, okay, he wants me to hold this altitude, and then he wants me to fly to the waypoint. And that's kind of the way the system's meant to work.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. And then another thing that can happen, and I've seen happen to folks, so, no offense to your setup at all, the X56 is one of the cheaper sticks out there, and sometimes it can get erroneous readings from the sensor. And if your dead zone in your axis controls isn't big enough, sometimes that will just erroneously kick your autopilot off because DCS thinks, oh, he's moving the stick, therefore the jet should think, oh, he wants the autopilot to be kicked off, when that might not be what's happening, from your perspective. Gotcha. Just something to keep in mind. Also, it looks like, did you kick the auto throttle off when we changed the autopilot there?
No, I didn't. I don't think I did.
Okay, so looks like A-18C is no longer on your HUD, which means that auto throttle is no longer connected, and that's why you dropped airspeed really, really quick there, because I think you may have brought your throttle back. Same thing with the throttle and auto throttle. If you move your throttle, the jet will think, uh-oh, the auto throttle is getting behind, it's not doing the right thing, I better kick that off and give the pilot back control. Yep, so exact same logic, basically.
Gotcha.
Yep, so we'll go ahead and unpause here. I was trying to figure out, like, why the heck is he in, like, a slow climb when the autopilot should be on in altitude hold mode? And I was like, oh, okay, it's because the autopilot wasn't configured correctly.
Oh, wait, hold on. Waypoint 3 now.
Yep.
Yeah, I may have accidentally touched it. I didn't realize I did.
Yeah, no worries. Just a matter of practice and understanding what's happening with the aircraft, you know?
Yeah. And a lot of things going on.
Exactly.
There we go.
Well, I'm just catching back up with you here. And I'm saddled back up with you on your right side.
Gotcha. I see you.
Yep. Cool. So what we'll do is we'll keep on flying out to waypoint 3 here to give us enough separation. But once we hit waypoint 3, we're going to bypass waypoint 4, and we're going to fly to waypoint 5, where our targets will be located.
Okay.
And we're going to bomb Damascus International Airport. On the military ramp area, which is on the further western side of the field, we've got a number of Aleutian IL-76s and some rows of MiGs set up for us to drop our bombs on.
Okay.
And we're going to work on trying to get you to drop your bombs in a nice roll-in maneuver. So the reason we want to use a roll-in maneuver is multifold. Number one is if we fly directly at our target and we then just kind of push our nose over with negative Gs, our body and our aircraft are stressed for positive Gs, not negative Gs. So we're a lot more maneuverable rolling over and pulling on the stick, and our body physically is going to take that a lot easier as the pilot. The second, of course, is if we fly directly at our target, it's going to get lost below our nose at some point. And if we can't see our target, then we can't hit it. And then the third reason is if we can't see our target, there's a lot of angry dudes down there with AAA guns and SAMs who want to kill us, right?
Right.
So, and if we can't see them shooting at us, then how are we possibly going to dodge that SAM or that stream of AAA?
Gotcha. I just realized my my seat wasn't armed.
Yep. I was wondering why you had that master caution there, but I'm glad you caught that.
Right. Yeah, I've done the roll maneuver a few times, not many though. So.
Yep. All right. Well, we'll work on it here. Once we hit waypoint 3, let's climb up to 18,000 feet on the way over to waypoint 5.
Keep barometric on and just pull slowly?
Yep, so barometric altitude hold will maintain your altitude, right? So if you pull back on the stick, eventually it's going to break out of the autopilot, or you're going to let go of the stick and it's going to try to snap you back down to that previous altitude. Gotcha. So we're gonna kick the autopilot off, and we're just going to hand fly it from waypoint 3 out to our target.
Okay.
Typically, when you're in a combat scenario, you want to try to avoid using the autopilot, just so that way you don't get surprised by something. Now, there are times, of course, where you do use it, like high workload situations, but for the most part, you want to try to avoid it.
Okay.
All right, and you're the leader, so your choice whether we make a left or a right-hand turn over to waypoint 5.
Let's make a right-hand turn.
Roger. And go ahead and kick that autopilot off, and let's climb on up.
All right, climbing up. And turning right.
Roger.
You said 18,000?
Yep, 18,000.
Coming back down.
Roger.
Of course, I overshot.
Yep. It's all good. In the pitch ladder, you know what straight and level looks like, right?
Yes, sir.
Perfect.
Now, do I fly it? Maybe not.
Big thing is, try to really relax your grip on the stick and try to use your fingertips more than, wrapping your whole palm around the stick, and that can really help with your precision when it comes to flying.
That's something that I've been trying to do with the refueling, is trying to keep small movements.
Yep.
Nice and relaxed, and it's hard when that basket's flying.
Yep. And when you're trying to fly in formation and make those nice gentle changes, big thing is to separate out the pitch and roll. Make a correction in pitch, then make a correction in roll, and so on and so forth, rather than trying to do both at the same time. That's called flying the cross, where basically you're making the stick make a cross pattern rather than moving it all around the 4 quadrants.
Okay. And then that way, as a wingman, it's easier to pick a direction and go with it instead of having to guess.
Yeah, exactly. And also keep in mind that flying through the air, especially when you're flying in formation, think of it more like ice skating than driving a car, if that makes any sense. So if you make a correction one direction, you're just going to keep on sliding that direction until you cancel it out. So if you look at me here, so if I start to want to get further away from you, if I roll to get further away, and I roll back to wings level, I'm going to keep getting further away. I have to actively cancel it out by rolling the other direction. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Perfect.
It's funny that, I play hockey and I used to be a figure skater, so yeah, I get it.
Oh, perfect. Well, then that analogy lands.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So let's go ahead and speed up to a more tactical airspeed here. So let's go for about 400 indicated. That should be right around Mach 0.8.
Alright, so I'm going to ask a dumb question.
Go for it.
So my HUD.
Yep.
With my, oh my god. I can't think of the terminology to save my life right now. The vertical bars, which are indicating degrees, correct?
Yep, the pitch ladder.
Yeah, so I'm looking at my HUD. It's slightly off to the left.
Yeah. So
a minute ago, it was slightly off to the right. So what causes that?
So the pitch ladder is going to display to you essentially the crosswind that you're feeling.
Okay.
And the pitch ladder is going to be kind of glued to the velocity vector, which is the little airplane symbol on your HUD.
Okay.
That velocity vector is where your airplane is going, you think of it a few heartbeats out into the future. That's your trend of where the aircraft's going. So the pitch ladder likes to stick to your velocity vector. So right now we have a right to left crosswind. Before, we were flying the complete opposite direction because we just kind of turned around in a bit of a hairpin turn there. So now we've got a right to left crosswind. So that's basically what's going on with that. Now, when you're in navigation master mode and you press the cage uncage button, you can cage the pitch ladder back to the center of your HUD if, say, the crosswind is so bad that the pitch ladder and the velocity vector just get blown clear off the field of view of your HUD. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I got you now.
Yeah. So, but that's going to be super, super helpful for you when you start to do crosswind landings, is you're going to be able to put the velocity vector right on the runway, and that's going to help you correct for that crosswind. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Perfect. As well as it just gives you that awareness of like, yep, we got some wind coming from right to left here.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll go and unpause here.
All right.
Okay, so right behind that little puffy cloud in front of us, we have our target area, which is the airfield. And our targets are at the base of the fire on the right-hand side of the airfield.
Okay. So
to start off with the roll and maneuver, we're just going to roll the jet, and we're going to fly an offset, probably about a heading of 155 or so that way we are not flying directly at the target.
155.
Good job. And that ramp area just to the right-hand side of that big fire is going to be where those nice, juicy IL-76s are going to be parked.
Okay.
So as we fly on this heading, we're just going to be patient, and we're going to wait until our target touches our canopy bow from our perspective in the ejection seat. Then we're going to roll almost all the way upside down. We're basically going to want to point the middle mirror on our canopy bow at our target, pull our nose down to the target by pulling back on the stick, roll back to wings level, and then get the CCIP pipper onto the target and press the weapon release button.
Okay. So when it hits the you called it the bow?
Yep, the canopy bow.
Okay.
May have to slide a little bit further to the right, maybe come to about 160 so we can keep our eyes on the target. This is all about dynamic flying, kind of just getting what you need to see the target.
Gotcha. Alright. And they're on that apron down there?
Yep. So I would go ahead and roll on in. Nice job. Looking good, looking good. I like it. Nice and aggressive. Roll back to wings level. Get that fall line onto a target. And then wait for that CCIP pipper to cross over the target and press the weapon release button. Nice job. Now pull off, pull off, pull off. Hit the burners and climb back up to altitude. And good job making a nice turn. Make it harder for those AAA gunners down there to shoot at you. I love it. Good job.
Okay, it's got to be hard flying with somebody you've never flown with before, that they don't have any idea what they're doing.
Yeah, it's not easy. You new guys don't make it easy on me, that's for sure. But you're doing a really good job.
So we don't try to make it hard for you.
Now make sure you bring it back out of burner so that way we can conserve some fuel. Alright, that was really, really good. We're just going to do that 3 more times here. Keep in mind that waypoint 5 is still our target, so we're going to have to come back around on it.
Okay. We'll mix it up. We'll go left this time.
Sounds good.
Rolling left.
Beautiful. Good job on the level turn, I like it. Try to bring that altitude back up to about 18,000 to start off with. Give yourself plenty of room for that bombing run. Don't confuse the fighter base down at our 9 for our target area.
Gotcha.
The Damascus International is the big airport off to about our 10 o'clock.
Roger that. Let's come back up a little bit more speed.
Yep. Big thing with when it comes to CCIP bombing to increase your accuracy is don't bomb with the don't aim with the CCIP reticle, aim with the fall line, that big vertical line. So get the target somewhere on that vertical line and then wait for the CCIP to cross your target, and use that as your timing device as to when to press the weapon release button.
Okay.
So can you see the target?
Yeah.
Beautiful. Just want to make sure we're squeezed into a little tighter here.
Alright.
And when you're ready, hit it.
Rolling it.
Roger. Very nice. Good job, good job. Very good, very good. I love it. Pickle. Nice. We dropped our bombs at exactly the same time. That's what I like to see. Use that energy that we just built up in the dive to climb back up. Get outside of the envelope of all those mean AAA gunners that want to kill you down there. Really, really good job. On the climb up away from the target, just want to see a little bit more of a turn. Make it as hard as possible for those AAA gunners to get you.
Gotcha. Roger that.
Yep. Very nice. Really, really good job.
High.
Yep, you're good. I'd rather be high than low to start off a bombing run. For what we're doing today, anyway.
I haven't done a lot of dumb bomb drops. I've tried to my hand at some GPS and laser guided, but I try to stick more to air just because it's more comfortable.
Gotcha. Well, that's why we're doing this then, to get you out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Basically, this is kind of the basic tactical maneuver that pilots are taught in flight school, and then everything else builds off of this first tactical dynamic maneuver.
Gotcha. Sorry, I'm having to play with my trim a little bit.
Yep, no worries. That's totally to be expected.
There we go, that's better.
Beautiful.
Alright. Alright, turning right.
Alright. Nice job. Are you still planning for a right-hand offset away from the target?
I'm going left, actually.
Okay.
Sorry, I should have communicated.
No worries. What's your current fuel state?
9,600 right now.
Okay. Perfect. So we're offset a little bit far from the target. It's just going to give us a bit of a shallower dive angle.
Okay.
If you're still using that canopy bow as your reference, that's being offset further to the left or further to the right. It's just going to give a shallower dive angle.
Gotcha. All right, rolling in.
Roger.
All right.
Nice. I like it. And pickle. Nice job. Okay, we got one bomb left. Let's make it good.
All right.
Good job on the turn, but more climb, more climb.
Oh,
get away from those jerks on the ground that want to kill us.
So what's a good attitude or angle?
Well, it's kind of,
like 30 degrees.
Yeah, that's a good place to start with. You know, it really all depends on your energy state. You know, how much fuel you got left. You know, all kinds of stuff. You know, but basically, you know, 30 degrees is a good place to start with, and then adjust from there. You know, depending. The biggest thing is we don't want to get so far nose up that we get to a area where we are now like stalling ourselves right over the top of an enemy SAM site, because that's just going to be,
or ended up at 23,000 feet.
Yeah, well, that's fine too. Like I said, it's much better to air high than low when it comes to AAA batteries and things.
Yeah.
As well as when you're in a more tactical situation, you're going to be using more block altitudes, so that might be, you may be working a strike, at an altitude block between like 20 and 22 or 18 and 21. So that way you do have a little bit more wiggle room, but while still separating yourself from the altitude of other flights of jets who may be working the same target.
Okay.
So yeah, so as you're like, yanking and banking and flying in combat, it's not going to be nearly as precise altitude-wise as when you are, flying around an aircraft carrier or around an air base and there's tons of jets all going for the same runway.
Gotcha.
It's kind of one of those things. Aviation's kind of all learning about the degree to which you need to do things.
Okay.
One thing I'm really liking, though, is so far, I don't know if you're doing this on purpose, is you have attacked the target from a different direction every single time, which is really, really good.
I'm going to say that was intentional.
Okay, we'll go with that then.
It was an intentional act.
Yeah.
All
so
right.
Even the AI AAA gunners here in DCS, that actually does matter for them. Is if you attack from a different direction, then they have to swing their guns around to a new direction to try and shoot at you.
Okay. Alright, is that enough offset?
It's looking pretty good.
Okay.
I'm just going to let you lead us totally through this.
Blind leading the blind.
I'm not totally blind, but pretty close. So as we get closer here, I'm starting to need to lean to the left-hand side of my cockpit to see the target, so maybe just want to come just a hair to the right, but up to you.
No, I get you. I see what you're saying. I thought it was far enough away.
Yeah.
come in a little bit more.
And you see how this is a pretty dynamic thing, right? It's not a one-size-fits-all.
Right. Alright, I'm going to try to go for that farthest right plane.
Go for it.
Are there planes in the corner, or is it just...
Nope, just in the little parking spots there.
Okay.
Yep.
Turning in.
Roger.
And pickle.
Pickle? Beautiful. Love it. Very, very nice job. And let's start heading on a heading of 180 to head back towards our home base, and then we'll get the navs set up from there. We're just going to climb back up to 18.
Slow way down.
Oh, we're still over bad guy territory, so speed is life. Remember that.
Okay. You said at 180?
Yep. 180 on the heading. And we will steer for waypoint 7.
All right.
So at this point, I know that you have exhausted your external tanks, so we'll talk about how to jettison those bad boys.
Yeah, I have struggled with that.
Yeah, no problem. So now that we're established on 180, we can just make a slight left turn to about 155 for our waypoint 7. Alright, so for when it comes to jettisoning stores off of your aircraft, you have two different methods of jettisoning stores for two different situations. We have a emergency jettison, which will basically drop everything air to ground and anything external fuel tanks wise off your aircraft with the press of a single button. And that's going to be the push to jet yellow and black button just underneath your master arm switch. Don't push it though for me.
Okay, so the jettison, select jettison.
So yeah, the one I'm talking about though for the emergency is the black and yellow button just underneath the master arm switch. Just want to make sure you know where that is.
No. Okay.
Yep, don't push it though for today.
Okay. Gotcha.
So that's called the Admiral's doorbell, because if you accidentally press that in peacetime and training without an emergency, you're gonna go see the Admiral.
Okay.
When it comes to selectively jettisoning stores off your aircraft, like say just your fuel tanks or maybe a hung bomb or something of that nature, you're going to go to the Jet Station Select buttons, which is just to the left-hand side of your IFE, underneath your left DDI. And there's 5 buttons: center, LI, RI, LO, and RO for left inner, right inner, and left outer and right outer. Those are going to be your hard points on your aircraft.
Okay.
We currently have fuel tanks on your aircraft on the left inner, right inner, and center line stations. So click those 3 buttons for me. And then with those stations selected, coming down to the Select Jet button, which is just to the right-hand side of your flap switch.
Yep.
We're going to rotate the outer ring to the stores position, which is the furthest right-hand position, turning it clockwise. Once you're there, you just want to make sure that you have your master arm switch set to arm, and then you can press that red jet button and away your tanks are going to go. So you got one tank that's still hung, so go ahead and press that red jet button again, and there she goes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I figured that that's where it was, but I didn't realize the jet station select up top.
Yep, that's how you do it.
Gotcha. And then I unclick those?
Yep, you can unclick them if you want. Sometimes I'll even set up my selective jettison before I even go into combat as part of my fence in routine, just so that way I can get rid of those tanks in a hurry if I need to.
Okay.
One thing to also keep in mind in terms of flying realistically is squadrons don't have a unlimited amount of fuel tanks, right? So you really only want to get rid of those if you are in some sort of a hazardous situation. Like, say, you just got a bunch of SAMs shot at you, or a bunch of MiGs are chasing you down, something of that nature. Okay. Or you're in an emergency situation, and you need to get rid of that drag quickly.
Gotcha. I had heard that before. I don't know if it was from one of your videos, or, but I did hear that the Navy doesn't like to drop it, but they don't have to.
Yep, exactly. Also, I find that having a bit of a draggier jet can make practicing things like landings and air-to-air refueling, things like that, just a hair easier, because it forces you to have your engines spooled up a bit higher, and the F404 engines in the F-18 have a bit of a high spool time.
Okay.
Yeah. How are you when it comes to landings?
I think I'm okay.
Okay. Are you mostly doing straight-ins or overheads?
Mostly just straight-ins.
Okay.
Yeah.
No
I'm
problem.
not gonna lie, I'm not one for patterns.
Okay.
But
no problem.
I do understand the pattern. I just
cool.
Don't do it very often. I'm not gonna lie, I don't land very often because usually I pick a mission or a training and it's already over and I don't have to land.
Okay. No worries. When it comes to like my big long scripted missions, the landing and working with the A-18C controllers and doing an overhead with a flight of your friends, that's probably the most fun part in my opinion.
I got you.
So you're gonna learn to like it for sure.
I dig it.
Yeah. So we're gonna fence out at this point. So we're gonna do that same fence check, but in reverse, and safe the jet and make sure that we are safe before we bring the jet in for a landing.
All right. So master arm set to safe.
Yep. We're gonna go back to navigation master mode by turning air to ground master mode off. External lights back on.
Okay. Is that formation lights or?
That's just going to be your position lights. Okay. And then in the F-18, there is a button on your HOTAS to turn your external lights on and off. I think it's L by default on your keyboard.
Okay. Yeah, I probably don't have that one set yet. I still don't have a lot of buttons set.
Yeah. So the reason why Navy jets tend to have a button on your HOTAS itself for your external lights is when you're on an aircraft carrier at night, you have none of your lights on while taxiing, and you taxi, you get onto the shuttle on the catapult for launch, and then because it's dark, the ground crewmen who are directing your jet and the shooter on the catapult can't see your hand for a salute very well. So at night, in place of the pilot giving a salute to say, hey, I'm ready to get launched off the deck, it is turning on your external lights. So instead of having to run your hand through the cockpit and turn on a whole bunch of different light switches, it's just one switch that's the master for all of your external lights.
Gotcha. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. And by default, it's on the L key, so you can hit that key to turn them all on once you get all the brightness knobs turned on. Sound good?
Yes.
Sweet. All right. keep in mind that your formation lights, you want to keep those off during the daytime.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Okay.
So those formation lights, you'll also hear people call them slime lights. Those only come on after sunset and before sunrise.
Those are like the green ones, right?
Yep, the green strips.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Alright, so master arm off. What was the second thing you said?
We're just going to also make sure that we have our ECM set to standby and our dispensers set to off.
Gotcha.
And we're, going to check our navigation, of course, check our fuel, all that good stuff. Basically go through that full fence check again to safe your Jetta.
Okay.
So waypoint 7 is going to get us lined up for runway 31 at Muwafaq Salty. So if we hit waypoint 7 while being pointed at the airport, that's going to get us nice and lined up. So I'm going to play ATC a bit here for us to get us lined up for a nice straight-in initial to the overhead for runway 31.
Okay, say that again, I'm sorry.
So I'm just gonna get you nice and lined up for a straight-in initial to the overhead pattern for runway 31.
Okay.
Yep. So let's go ahead and descend and maintain 7,000 feet.
Descend to 7,000 and maintain 7,000 feet.
Yep. So you'll hear controllers basically say descend and maintain blah 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 feet, which means descend to that altitude and hold it until I tell you to do something else.
Roger.
And I'm going to take a look at the F10 map to give us some vectors here. Alright, let's come left, heading 130.
Left 130.
And go ahead and maintain 350 knots.
350, roger.
Go ahead and keep coming on down to 7,000. Field elevation at Muwafaq Salty is about 1,600 feet MSL. Standard traffic pattern altitude for fighter jets at an airfield is 1,500 feet AGL. So we'll go ahead and set our pattern altitude here for 3,100 feet MSL.
3,100 feet.
Yep. We're just going to maintain 7,000 for now.
Okay.
And we're going to hold this heading of 130 for a bit longer. And basically, air traffic controller is basically just playing a geometry game. They're trying to get you lined up with the runway in the most expeditiously way possible without running you into other jets. So we're past 7,000 here, so keep an eye on that.
I was watching my speed.
So remember,
it's amazing
yeah, keep that instrument scan going, right? Don't you know, concentrate on one thing to the detriment of other things. See, now you're going for your altitude and you're losing your speed, right?
It's hard.
Yep. So just keep your eyes going in a circle. Like, force your eyes into a circle around your HUD, so that way you're seeing everything and admiring nothing.
Gotcha.
But it's hard, man. That's for sure. And you're doing this in your nice air-conditioned office. Just wait till you're learning how to do it in a hot, sweaty Cessna 172 in the middle of summertime.
I would love to. That's why ever since I was a kid, I flew like like Microsoft Flight Sim and stuff like that. I've always wanted to fly.
Alright.
So I'm slightly jealous, or a lot of jealous. A lot of jealous.
Okay, so we're going to come right to a heading of 210, maintain 7,000.
210, maintain 7,000.
Well, the good thing is, if you can play DCS and do all the multitasking that the combat aspect requires in DCS, and then if you start joining my missions and whatnot, and starting, you know, talk on the radio and practicing basically more or less the way you would talk on the radio in a real-life airplane, it makes getting your pilot's license a lot easier.
So how long have you been flying?
In real life, about 6 years now.
Okay.
Yeah.
You said 210, correct?
Yes, sir. Doing my best to cosplay an ATC controller here, so hopefully I can get some good vectors for us.
Alright, so on a side note, lot ATC, does that have to be downloaded by everybody?
No, it does not. Just the air traffic controllers.
Okay.
Yep.
So I was trying to get everything ready just in case I decided to do it, but...
Yeah, you're all good. Alright. Turn to heading 240 and descend down to 4,000 feet.
240, 4,000 feet.
Yep. Alright, we're going to continue that right-hand turn to 310 degrees, and we are cleared for the visual to the overhead.
310.
Altitude. Altitude.
And down to a pattern altitude of 3,100 feet.
310?
Yep.
Alright, 3,100 feet.
So do you see the airfield out there on our nose? Just to the left?
Yeah, 1130.
Yep. So we're cleared for the visual now, which means just go ahead and fly us on the correct geometry to get us lined up for the runway. So I'd come left to a heading of about 280 or so. And then once we get lined up with the runway, then we'll come back to the right to get lined up on it. When you're leading a formation, the further out from the runway you can get everybody lined up on it, the better, especially when you've got a bunch of guys trying to make an overhead look nice.
Gotcha. Alright, you said 3,100 feet?
Yes, sir. That's going to be our pattern altitude.
Alright, runway's on the left side?
It's going to be, yep, on the left side. So start coming back to the right towards the runway. Nice and gentle. Get us nice and lined up. Nice. Beautiful job, dude.
Thanks, sir.
Just keep an eye on the altitude. We're a little bit low and a little bit slow. Want to be 350 knots, 3,100 feet. and I'll have you brake halfway down the runway.
Say again?
I'm going to have you start the brake halfway down the runway.
Okay. I didn't realize how slow I was going.
Okay. Good job. Good recovery on the speed and the altitude. I like it. And go ahead and start the brake.
Which way, right? Left?
Left brake.
Okay.
Yep. Nice job. I like it. I'm going to start my brake over the end of the runway here.
Oh.
You alright?
Yeah, it was master caution came on.
Oh, that's probably going to be a bingo alert. Alright, I'm just going to climb up above the pattern here so I can watch your screen and help you out with the landing here. Make sure you get the gear and flaps down. Oh. I didn't realize you were still so fast. That's okay.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Make sure you get that speed brake out to help slow yourself down a bit.
I don't know if it's out. May not be.
It's out.
Bingo.
Okay, perfect.
Yep. You got the little green speed brake indicator there. Good recovery from being 200 knots fast.
Hey, go big or go home.
Yeah, I guess so. If you'd like, I can share my screen and demonstrate more what we're looking for a landing, if you'd like.
Yeah, I didn't realize I was turning so hard. I'd usually like to be a little bit farther out.
So I was actually going to say you were a little too far out.
Really?
Yeah. So
Really?
I'll explain what I mean here.
Alright, yeah, let me get off the runway. Let me see where...
No problem.
I will go to the left.
Even though you touched down super fast, your landing gear and your wheels are still intact, so that's a win for us.
Hey?
Yeah.
I'll take it. I'll get past
Absolutely.
Alright, and I'll just park it right here.
Bingo. Bingo.
Yep. No problem.
Alright. I'm ready when you are.
Sounds good. I'm going to share my screen for you. Just let me know when you can see.
Oh, hold on. Let's see. I'll have to do this. Come on, you can focus. Oh, I may have broken it.
Bingo.
What broke?
Nothing. Alright, I'll just watch from here.
Okay. Sounds good. Let me know when you can see my cockpit here, and I'll get going with the demo.
Well, let's see.
I'd just go ahead and just like Alt-Tab over to Discord.
Yeah. What I'm trying...
Or you can just kill your DCS entirely. We're done flying for tonight.
Alright, there we go.
Awesome.
I'll eat dinner in a minute. Yeah. Okay. I love you.
The gal pal?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I'm trying to load your screen.
Oh, really? Is it just kind of like making a little loading icon?
Yeah. Here,
Okay,
let me kill DCS real quick. Or on my side, at least.
Yep.
I think that's what it is.
Yeah, kill your stream, and then I'm going to kill mine and put it back up, and sometimes that can do it as well.
Okay.
My stream again.
I've got an odd setup, let's put it that way.
Gotcha.
Come on, why can't I get rid of you? Yeah, that's the only thing I don't like about this this Oculus is it's hit or miss if it wants to be play nice.
Yeah, I found that most VR headsets are like that. And it's one of the reasons why I'm not a huge fan of VR. I feel like personally, like these VR goggles should just work like a second screen, you know, rather than a whole other computer, basically.
Actually, I found that I'm more of a nerd as I get older. But I do like the Oculus because now a buddy of mine plays. We play basically a D&D game together now.
That's cool.
Yeah. All right. I'm here now.
Okay. Beautiful. And you can see my cockpit.
Yes.
Awesome. So, there's the airfield. Okay. So I'm just going to turn in and basically just demonstrate a overhead pattern here for you, just so that way you have a visual on what you want to try and emulate when it comes time to practice for you. Okay.
Okay.
So I'll unpause here.
Bingo.
A really cool cheat code for finding the airport is if you have a waypoint on top of the airport, you can always designate that waypoint as a target, and now you've got a beautiful little diamond on top of the airport. So that's always a fun little cheat code that you can use. And I'm now just flying to get back
Altitude.
into the pattern here.
Altitude. Bingo. Bingo.
So you did a really, really good job of recovering your airspeed back to 350-ish and back to pattern altitude at 3,100 feet, so that was fantastic. And I'm just coming downhill here back to pattern altitude as well. Getting lined up on the runway. Now, a pretty semantical difference, but something that other players will be knowledgeable of and probably expecting from you if you're either leading the flight or as a wingman, just for your own knowledge, is Air Force jets, so like F-16s, F-15s, F-4s, will fly an overhead pattern directly on top of the runway. Okay. Navy jets like F-18s, AV-8s, F-14s are going to fly slightly offset to the right-hand side of the runway. Okay. And this is so on an aircraft carrier, you fly the upwind to the right, so that way you can look down and see the landing area of the carrier is clear of aircraft and personnel before you start your brake turn. Okay. So, small thing there. So I'm just going to offset just slightly to the right, enough that I can look down and see the runway, but not so much that I'm just like in the next county or something. Okay. So just making just nice, gentle corrections here. Got to change up my power setting a little bit, bring it back down a bit, closer to 350. Getting a little bit of turbulence, that's okay too. Also, Navy jets are going to brake a little bit further down the runway, like you're simulating an airfield, or a aircraft carrier, I should say. Looking down, we can see the runway's clear. Beautiful. And then for the brake turn itself, we want to be looking at our G meter here. And in the turn, we want to make our G meter basically match 1% of our airspeed. So if I'm at 3.5 Gs at 350 knots, that's going to be perfect. And then I'm going to start pulling back on the stick less and less and less to keep my G matching about 1% of my airspeed. And if we can do that as close as we possibly can, doesn't need to be absolutely perfect, that's going to get us on the perfect distance away from the carrier deck, or in this case, the airfield on the downwind portion of the traffic pattern. That makes sense?
Yes.
Perfect. And like I said, it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but just as close as you can get it.
Okay.
So we're going to start our brake, and we're going to pop the speed brake, go to idle, and we're just going to go for 1% of our airspeed. Obviously, it's hard to make it exact, but as close as we can.
Okay.
Now, one thing that can be really difficult for new guys is when you get below 250 knots, which is VG and VFE, which means the gear extension and flap extension airspeeds of the F-18, and you start to bring the gear and the flaps down, a lot of guys will feel a really huge ballooning effect from the extra lift from those flaps. So you have to really anticipate that extra lift from those flaps and push forward on the stick a bit, so that way you don't get ballooned up, 500, 1,000 feet on the downwind. So that way you can stay at traffic pattern altitude.
Gotcha.
One little trick you can do to make that whole evolution of bringing the flaps down and fighting that ballooning effect a little bit easier is when you're still banked in the brake turn, and once you get under VG and VFE, drop the gear and the flaps while you're still banked, and that will help negate some of that ballooning effect. So we'll unpause here. Gear and flaps coming down. Gonna cheat a little bit. Take a look at the runway. And we're now on the downwind.
Bingo. Bingo.
And I'm pushing forward on the stick to counteract that ballooning effect, but now, as soon as I hit roughly about 160 knots, now I got to go to the opposite. I got to start bringing the power back in, and I got to start releasing some of that forward pressure on the stick. Otherwise, I'm just going to descend very rapidly now. Once you get to about 160 and below in the F-18, your flight controls change completely, and it makes it a little bit more difficult for new guys coming in for a landing. You're in what's called the region of reverse command. And that is an aerodynamic phenomenon that occurs to all aircraft at landing speed, where normally when we want to climb, right, we just pull back on the stick and we bring our nose up and we climb. In the region of reverse command, we actually climb and descend via our power setting of our throttle. Does that make sense? Cool. So I'll demonstrate it here by flying a bit of an extended downwind here for us. Now we're also looking to get to on-speed AoA. And that's kind of a complicated name for something that's actually really simple. Basically, we want to get down to roughly close to landing speed. Doesn't even matter what our landing speed is. And we need to trim nose up slightly so that way our velocity vector gets right into the middle of the E bracket. Once our velocity vector gets close to the middle of the E bracket here, we're going to have our AoA indexer right here move to an amber donut. If we're red, that means that we're a little too fast. If we're green, that means we're too slow.
Okay.
In a jet aircraft, it doesn't matter what your landing speed is. You only want to land if you have your amber donut here, which means you're at the correct angle of attack. Your actual landing speed will change depending on the loadout on your aircraft, such as I'm carrying some external tanks here, how heavy you are, the temperature outside, the air density, the elevation of the airfield, whatever it is. So in the F-18, if you're landing with a heavier loadout, you might be getting an orange donut at as fast as 160 knots. So you want to touch down at 160 knots-ish. But if you're super light, way low on gas with no external stores, you might be landing as slow as 125, 130 knots. And at that speed is where you're going to get the orange donut. So what I'm trying to get at here is don't worry too much about the speed here. Okay. And don't look at tutorials that tell you, oh, you have to be at X speed to land the Hornet. That's incorrect. Okay. You need to be at an amber donut inside the E bracket. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
This is also an important concept because if you have the amber donut and you're in the E bracket, that means that your jet is positioned correctly, so that way your tail hook can snag a wire on the aircraft carrier. If you're not in the amber donut and not in the E bracket, then your hook could skip over the wires, or it won't be down far enough to even engage on the wires anyway. That's all making sense here? Questions, concerns? Perfect.
No, that's another thing I haven't been able to accomplish is carrier landing.
Yeah, no worries, man. It'll come. It just takes practice, you know? And this demonstration here should really help you out with that if you are practicing it. So once we're unpaused here, I'll open up the controls indicator so you can see my controls. And I'm just going to give a few little, just gentle taps on nose up trim. And I'm just going to get the velocity vector into the E bracket. And at this point, I'm going to demonstrate that region reverse command. Let's say I'm descending down to the deck of the aircraft carrier, or I'm descending down to the runway, and I'm like, uh-oh, I'm too low on the glide slope. Rather than pulling back on the stick, which is your first kind of like inclination, which is you're like, that's how airplanes fly. Actually, when you're at landing speed, you want to just push the throttle up and see how we start to climb. And then if we want to descend, we're just going to pull the throttle back, and the nose wants to come down. Do you see that? And I'm not moving the stick at all. Okay. So once you're in the E bracket, you've got that amber donut, and it's time to turn to the base leg and onto final. You don't really want to pull back on the stick at all. You just want to roll the jet and control the turn entirely by the throttle.
Okay, that's all right.
Bingo.
Yep.
Bingo.
We're not pulling. Yeah, we're not pulling back on the stick at all. And we're just controlling that turn by our bank and our throttle.
Okay.
And we're looking at the runway here, maybe a little bit more bank. Anytime you're turning from the base leg to final and you're in that base to final turn, if you're going to make an error, it's much, much easier to correct an error where you're accidentally turning too tight to the inside of the runway than overshooting the runway.
Okay.
Because it's easier to be like, oh, I'm going to be a little bit tight, so let's ease off on the bank, rather than be like, oh shit, and have to bank more to get to the runway.
Okay.
Yeah. So then we're just going to keep it coming around here. Nice and gentle, nice and easy.
Bingo. Bingo.
And of course, we're anticipating things, so we're going to start to roll out a little bit before we get to the runway. And at this point, now it's really all about throttle control. Your stick is doing almost nothing. It's all about moving your throttle to keep that velocity vector glued onto the touchdown zone of the runway.
Okay.
Now, of course, I'm making small corrections with bank, but I'm not doing all that much. The perfect glide slope in any aircraft, but the F-18 here, is going to be about 3 degrees. And you can kind of eyeball that. We got 5 degrees here, so 4 degrees is like here. We're roughly about 3 degrees right there. Okay. And we'll unpause, and we're coming down the glide slope, just adjusting, using nothing but throttle and bank. In the F-18, you want to land between 600 foot per minute descent and 800 foot per minute descent. So we can check that, and we're good there. We're negative 740 foot per minute descent. So we're right in the envelope. Just keeping that velocity vector right on the runway. Coming down, coming down. And we're getting into ground effect, and that's going to give us a little bit of a cushion. And boom. We're just flying it right down onto the runway. No flare, nothing. Just holding that nice, beautiful orange donut in the E bracket plop right down onto the runway. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
And then once you are rolling out, speed brake, and pull your stick all the way back to your lap and deflect those big stabs for even more drag. And then once you get under 100 knots, just some gentle braking to start to stop the jet. And of course, you don't want to stop unless you got a taxiway. Well, I guess I could have made that taxiway, but that's okay. And also something to note is if you're in a large mission with lots of jets, you may have a guy land behind you, maybe one of your wingmen, who's maybe going a little bit faster. So you want to come off to the right-hand side of the runway here. And that way, if somebody is going fast on landing, they can kind of bias off to the left-hand side, so that way they're not going to hit you.
Bingo.
Okay.
Bingo.
And we got a taxiway here, so we'll just taxi right on off. Cool, man. Any questions or concerns about that landing?
No.
Awesome.
I just need to practice.
Practice, practice, practice. That's what it's all about. You flew super, super well today, man. So don't worry about anything. It's just all about practice. You did really, 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 really well with those roll-ins and those dumb bomb deliveries. That was really fantastic. You're doing really well. I'd recommend just really try to practice nailing those altitudes through climbs and descents and trying to hold a nice steady airspeed. But you're super close. You just got to think a little bit further ahead of the airplane. And remember to keep that instrument scan going. You want to have your eyes going from airspeed to navigation to altitude to pitch, back to airspeed, back to navigation, back to altitude, pitch, and keep going in a circle like this. Okay. Then once that gets easier and easier, then you're going to start to go back to including things like your radar, or your EW systems, navigation systems, dropping your bombs, all of that kind of stuff. You just want to keep your eyes going all the time. Okay. So that way you don't fixate on, your airspeed and now your altitude's off, or fixate on the altitude and now your airspeed's off. But what's happening to you is totally, totally normal. That happens to everybody who's learning airplanes. Yeah. But you're doing super well. You're probably top 10% of people on a first training session for sure.